I'm Romanian. I'm born in Bucharest, which is the capital of Romania. I studied management and I have a master's degree in business. I practiced this for like 10 years and then I married and went abroad and basically my former career stopped.
So, this is your new career now, the wife of a diplomat.
I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't call it a career. I don't know if I could call it this way, but this is what I do these days.
Okay.
So actually, for the last 12 years, something like
12
this.
years. So, and you've moved around a bit. This is not your first international assignment.
No, we've been to Vienna for 5 years and then 1 year back home. And then we've been here already for 5 years. So probably we're gonna move soon from here. So,
Really? That's about as long as you usually stay in one place, right?
it's not a strict rule. Usually it's like 4 to 5 years in a place. I guess the idea, I mean, it depends. Like the Asian postings are shorter. As I understood, are usually 3 years. I think the general idea is that you don't have to get used too much to a place. I mean, you have enough time to know the country, but not to feel too much as a local. So you are still like a diplomat. So you go somewhere.
So tell me, maybe we could start with just what a day in the life for you is like. What is a day in your life like? Because before you answer that, you've got children as well, don't you?
Yeah, right. I have two kids. Now they are not that little. I mean, they are 12 and 10 now. So I would say like a normal, typical day for me in Vienna is quite different from what it is now, because in Vienna the kids are much smaller and I had my hands full. I still had time for other activities, but not as much as I have here, for example.
Okay.
And here, because they are in school most days, most of the day, so I get to have time for myself and for my diplomatic functions, first of all, and then for other activities that I choose to involve in.
Okay. And diplomatic functions involves what? Just generally meetings or...
Yeah, first of all, I mean, there are some events that you get to join your husband. Usually they are in the evening, though. Most of the events that I participate in are like especially for spouses. So we have in most of the countries there is like a diplomatic club where all the spouses or most of the spouses can join, and then they have different events. I mean, there are different classes, which is like very typical, let's say, for this kind of life. Like, if you want to paint, if you want to learn how to dance or whatever,
right.
Speak a foreign language. But it depends what classes or what groups in this club you join. I usually chose something like history, politics, residences, just to give you an example, architecture. So you get to meet a lot of people, basically like locals.
Yeah.
That are like professionals in some domain. Of course, you meet like also politicians and you also meet other diplomats. So it's a pretty international environment.
Yeah. And we'll get a bit more to those, to making friends and that kind of thing later. But before we get there, you in the book that you wrote, you make a lot of comparisons between Berlin and Vienna. So you were in Vienna, you were quite used to life there, and then the move to Berlin came up, and you were obviously thinking, oh well, it's also a German-speaking country. We should be fine. It must be fairly similar, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, actually, this is what I thought at the beginning. I mean, it's quite right. And I was quite happy when I heard out about our next posting. Also because of the kids, because they speak perfect German. So it was like a very easy move for them to move from Austria to Germany. Of course, there are some differences also in language, but most of the things are very similar. So it wasn't such a drastic change.
Okay.
But for me, it was. I mean, and this is one of the mistakes that I've made. And I also, if you read the book, maybe you remember, because I have a special chapter in which I try to list a couple of advices that I should give to other people like expats or other diplomats or something when moving abroad, what they should not do or what they should do. And one of the things that I've done, and I think it's a mistake, and I tried not to repeat again for the next posting, for example, is to compare like places. Because usually when when you think about the past, you usually forget all the bad things and remember only the
Yeah.
good parts. So
Yeah.
when you compare to something to the present, it will always like appear more glamorous and more like a fairy tale. And this is what happened to me at the beginning. I mean, of course, there are some differences, and I still think like Austrians are a little bit more friendlier than Germans. That's the truth, or from my point of view at least.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, I was comparing like everything, and it was quite difficult.
Yeah.
But now, for example, after 5 years of living here, I think, I mean, I really like Berlin. It's a very nice city, and I would recommend it to anybody who wants to move here, for example. So, like, my opinion changed in 5 years.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a bit of time to get over those comparisons and move on and accept the new
Right.
reality, and then you can find a new aspect to like about where you are now, I suppose.
And to find your place, because I
Yeah.
think that's very difficult for us, and that's why basically when I try to think why I should read this to write this book, I thought about it too. I mean, first of all, it was like I wanted to get rid or to help people get rid of all these cliches and misconceptions about our life, but second of all, it's like everywhere you go, you start from scratch, and it's a shock, mental tension and pressure that it's not easy to cope with for
Yeah.
a lot of people. I mean, I heard a lot of stories of like divorces or I don't know, depressions and stuff like this, and you need to find your place in the new city. And it takes a while. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, you get to meet other people, you get to know the city, but at the beginning, it's this feeling that you don't belong there, which is not very comforting.
Let's talk about that for a second, because in the book, I think that there's a section where you said that you developed some kind of mild depression, at least. That's what it came across in the book,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
started noticing, okay, you weren't feeling so great. Maybe explain what you were going through at that point.
Well, it started actually, I couldn't sleep at night. I mean, I was like going to bed and waking up around 2 or 3. Like, okay, when it happened one time, 2 times, it was okay. But when it started happening like every day, it got me thinking maybe something was wrong. And this was like the first sign. And the second sign was that I was very emotional. I mean, during daytime, I would like snap out or maybe cry out of
Right.
anything. I mean, I'm usually a very emotional person, but this was like out of normal. And this is what I thought maybe something was wrong. I went to our family doctor. Luckily, we found here a very nice family doctor, and she's very compassionate and nice. And I went to her, and she suggested maybe I go and see somebody like a professional. And I went there, and after some tests, okay, they ran some test analysis stuff, usual like normal things. But after that, I mean, the discussion that I had there made me realize I needed to change a little bit the lifestyle. I mean, what I was doing, because the problem was with me, and maybe I was, because I started maybe on the wrong foot here, and I decided, oh, I won't like it. I don't like the city or things like this. I wasn't very happy with my contacts and social life. And of course, I had this small circle of diplomatic friends, diplomatic spouses that I met regularly, or not very regularly, but anyway. And I had all these events. But these events are very nice, and people are very friendly, and you meet a lot of people and socialize. But it's not like a very close connection, because you know them, you're very polite, you stay there, and then you go home, and everybody has their own life. So it's
Yeah.
not like you get involved, have a close connection to anybody, like real friends.
I should
And
imagine it's
that's
a bit
what I
of like
miss.
a business connection, if you want to compare it to something like that, in a way.
Kind of. I mean, politeness is very important and diplomacy. So,
Yeah.
but it takes some time to really get friendly with somebody, and this is what I miss basically, because I'm a pretty friendly person, you know. So I really miss my friends. And I think also one factor that got me to this point was also the weather, because it happened like the first winter. So I had like barely any friends. I couldn't go out too much. And the weather is like awful in winter. I mean,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't snow or something, but
I know.
it rains a lot. And
Yeah, it's
what
terrible.
gets on my nerves, you see, so you
Yeah.
understand me.
Yeah, I
It's
understand.
also because it's very cloudy all the time. So you
Yeah.
barely see the sun like for weeks in a row. And this like really, I think I'm maybe a sun dependent person or something. So I was like really depressed because of this. I mean, I was just constantly checking the weather
Yeah,
channels. And
please,
when
some
I saw,
sun.
yeah, exactly. And oh no, again, another day with rain.
But it is
And
I must say, it is depressing because the first few winters that I had in Germany about 10 years ago, 10 to 13 years ago, it would really get cold. It was really cold, minus 10 degrees sometimes, and it would snow. And it was a lot of the winter was snowy. And that felt different. It felt because you'd have these beautiful blue skies and snow everywhere. And that was
snow.
that was nice. It was really, you could go
Yeah.
out for walks and you really enjoyed it. But then in the last few years, I've really felt that it's become exactly what you're saying. It's just gray, it rains, and the days are shorter,
Cloudy.
so you don't have a lot of sunlight. And the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
time it's
right.
just gray and dull and feels like nothing's happening. So I can definitely
And
understand it affecting moods.
yeah, and also I didn't expect this that the days are so short in winter time. I mean,
Yeah.
Vienna is not that far from here, and it's a
Yeah.
completely different situation. So I was like, I completely didn't expect this. So it was
Yeah.
like from 3:30 p.m. until next morning at 8 a.m. or something. It was
Yeah.
completely dark, so
Yeah.
a very long night. So I think these are all the factors that
They
help for it.
combined.
But luckily, I mean, I tried to get the advices that they gave me there. I mean, they said go out a lot, walk a lot, doesn't matter where, just go out and try to meet people, but like groups. Human mind needs to have this feeling of belonging to something, to a group or something outside the
Right.
family, or so the family is something that you live at home, but you also need to be involved with something else to feel useful and to belong to another group, like professional or something. And I didn't have that. And I tried to actually to do it from the very beginning, not because I thought I should do it like, but for example, when I was in Vienna and the kids started kindergarten, because I have to tell you, when we moved there, we moved like with our girl was like 1.5, and I was pregnant with the second one, so they are
Right.
like really really small.
Really young.
And but after a year and something, they started going to kindergarten, both of them. So I had like a few hours every day that I could spare and do something else. And I joined this group at United Nations Women's Guild is the name of it. So it's at United Nations headquarters in Vienna, and I really liked the work I did there. It was volunteer work, but I really liked it, and I got involved, and I had pretty good results. So when I moved to Germany, I tried to do the same from the very beginning. So I found this website where they had a very long list with NGOs all listed in Berlin. So I thought, okay, so I wouldn't have any problem. I will for sure find something. And it wasn't that easy. So I remember for the first few months, I think I sent like hundreds of letters, of emails to them, explaining who I was, and I was like offering my volunteer help, and almost
Nothing.
nobody answered. Yeah. So I was
That's
like,
surprising. That's surprising
really,
because
and
I
I
would
was
think these people would jump on the opportunity to have extra hands on board.
I thought so too. You know, that's why. I mean, you can imagine my disappointment.
Yeah.
and and then I found myself like winter, no friends, nothing, dark outside, no job,
Yeah.
and that's why. I mean, it was difficult, and it took some time to find what I do now. I work with UNICEF now, but it took like a year and a half or something,
Okay.
and even after that, I accidentally bumped into somebody from UNICEF at another conference. So it wasn't like anything planned, but I saw her there, this lady, and I went to her and, I want to help. And she couldn't say no.
It's so strange that that's how it had to happen. You were trying hundreds of opportunities, and instead the way it works is a chance encounter.
Right. It happened just by accident. But it was a lucky accident. So
But so let's talk about the time leading up to when that as well, because the feeling that I also got from the book is that you were also not feeling connected to the German culture at all. You weren't really meeting Germans or the locals, or what was the
yeah,
situation with the
because
local culture?
The problem is because I think they are not very friendly at the beginning.
No.
I didn't have too many chances to meet locals. I mean, okay, in the diplomatic circle, of course, I met some ladies which are Germans married to German diplomats, which are very, very nice and friendly, and I developed quite a nice friendship with some of them during all these years. But at the beginning, I mean, except from these ladies from there, I barely spoke to any other local. I mean, I thought it was a lot more difficult to make connection than it was in Vienna. Now, when I judge this, when I think about this, I think it's because they have a different mindset up. They are not very open at the beginning, but if you get to know them and if they get to know you, I mean, they take their time to know you, to study you from maybe from the distance. And then if you're worth trying, they
then
approach.
They'll give it a go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're at the next phase of the relationship.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting to hear that it was a similar thing for you, because that's something I hear from a lot of guests, that making friends, it's very difficult
I'm not
to No, it's not you, Alexandra. I can tell you it's not you. It's the Germans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did it happen to you too, or?
To me, I was fortunate enough that I worked in a very international company when I started working in Germany. So I had Germans around me, but I also had a lot of Americans and British people and Australians and English-speaking people, and then also Brazilians and Italians and all kinds of people working around me. So it was easy to make friends like that. But when I think back now, we made some German friends almost right away. But it was lucky, and they're definitely more open Germans than others, and that's, I think, what drew us to them. But but most of our friends were international. It was only later on that we made some closer friends with Germans. So now, I mean, it's different now. A lot of my closest friends here are German, but it was a lot of them were Germans where we had to work through that friends phase. And, so when you arrived, what kind of culture shock were you dealing with? I think one of the things you mentioned in the book was dealing with doctors, for example.
Oh, this was it's a long story, a long list, because especially when you have kids, you know that when you move somewhere, one of the most important things that you find a family doctor and a good doctor for everything. So in case anything happens, you know exactly right away who to call. Yeah. And I mean, we were lucky with our family doctor because somebody from the embassy actually recommended her to us, and she's also Romanian, so it was no problem. Okay. She was very nice because I think that's the main thing, because we are Romanians, we are like Latin people, very close to Italian style, Spanish style. So we talk a lot, we have a lot of friends, and we like to go out and party and stuff. And Germans are not like this. So I think this is like the main difference from the start. And in their approach, I think, for example, for doctors, I found they are not very compassionate, and I didn't like that, for example, because even when I go to a doctor, I mean, of course, I don't need them to be friends with me or something, but at least pretend they are very interested and care.
Just be polite and friendly. Pretending like you care about my health.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, of course, they are very good professionals, and especially these days, I mean, they prove they have a very good medical system. So it's no doubt about it, and I never complained about it. I mean, I never had any problems that they couldn't solve. But what I was complaining, what I didn't like was their human approach, or I don't know how to say. I finally found people, so I have a dentist, a family doctor, everything. So I'm covered for everything, but it took a while. So
And what is the what other culture shocks that you experienced that you can think of?
Also, I think this is what happened here, and everybody, when I complained about it, for example, when I was going to my diplomatic events or something, and I was talking with somebody, a German lady, and I was maybe complaining a bit about all these things. Of course, I'm very diplomatic and I take care of what I say. they always told me that, yeah, maybe Berlin is a little bit more different. So Berlin is not Germany. So other cities are maybe more different. I was shocked at the beginning because I thought people on the street are maybe sometimes aggressive or rude, aggressive like verbally, not
Right.
in other sense. But I mean, they could shout at you or do things that I didn't encounter in other countries, for example. And for example, let's say you go to Italy and everywhere you go, everybody says "ciao, come
Yeah.
stai," and
Yeah.
everybody smiles. And here it's not the case. So,
No.
and I didn't expect that, or I'm not used to it, and I still don't like it. I mean, I don't like this kind of approach, and but I think I got used to it. I mean, after 5 years, I know what to expect, so it doesn't surprise me too much anymore.
Yeah, that does, you do get used to those kinds of things, but I also think it has a lot to do, as you suggested, that some people may have already said. I think it does have to do with the fact that Berlin is pretty much a big city as well. I find here in
Probably.
Nuremberg the people are a little bit friendlier, but they're still very closed. I mean, they will. I think it depends where you are, just exactly the level of unfriendliness, but they're always unfriendly.
Yeah, but everybody says that Berlin is friendlier than other cities because it's a very, I mean, actually Berlin it's a very big city, of course, and it's so international. I mean, you can
Yeah,
find like people from all over the world, so it's like a melting pot of everything, which is a thing I like. I mean, I like getting in touch with people from different cultures. I like to learn from other people,
yeah.
other cultures. So I was always like this. I mean, I had this openness to other people ever since I know myself. So it's not a problem with this.
Yeah, and I guess that also helps with your lifestyle, that having that kind of openness. It's not something you could do if you didn't have an openness or a certain level of flexibility.
Yeah, and you have to. I mean, living this kind of life, I think you have to have some skills from the beginning, but then you train yourself
Right.
to have some. I mean, you train yourself how to get in touch with somebody, to get to talk to somebody, but you have to have some skills, and
Yeah.
you can learn them. I mean, day by day, you know how to make connections, how to mingle, how
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
of course you always have to keep in mind that there are like certain boundaries that you don't have to cross, and for the diplomatic community I think there are some sensibilities that you have to be aware of them, but other than this it's a very nice world, and of course
Mm.
it's a very educated world, and truly I'm privileged to be part of it, so
Yeah.
that's the truth.
Yeah. So there is actually, on that topic, there's a quote from the book where you wrote, "Diplomatic life is good and privileged, but it can make you lose contact with reality." So maybe you can just speak to that.
In this world, let's say like closed world or something, you get to meet a lot of people. I mean, really important people, powerful politicians, and at some point you can forget who you are because first of all, you don't have an official role, so you are just like the spouse. You meet
Yeah.
them, but you don't have any saying in anything, so you don't decide anything.
Right.
But you might get the sense that you are like different, you are special, or I don't know, you are treated special, you have a diplomatic status in a country, you have like some advantages, maybe small advantages from the locals, but these are like only things that last only while you are there, so it's not
Yeah.
like you are special forever anyway. And I always try to keep in mind. I mean, I've been to this course. It's like anyway, like a certificate program on cultural diplomacy, and I had this professor there, which I liked very much. I mean, he taught a lot of things, interesting things. But what I remember that he was like keep saying and saying to us all the time. He was like, "Stay humble. That's very important in life." And I think this is like the idea, so you don't have to forget where you came from and who you really are, so you're like everybody else,
Yeah.
so it's just a moment where you maybe have some small advantages. It's only a short moment.
So it's clinging on. It's making sure that you remember that reality of this is kind of just temporary and
Yeah,
it's
right.
privileged and
Because people have these funny ideas. I mean, I wrote also in a book quite funny stories and questions that I got over the years. I mean, people have these maybe ideas that diplomats are like untouchable, or
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
which is not true. So anyway,
But also in the book, and I guess along these lines was something that came out that you said you give up a lot for a lifestyle like this, and it's though I think if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm sorry if I misquote you here, but it seemed like you had your own dreams in the beginning. You did that. I think you said a master's in business. I can't remember what degree it
yeah,
was.
yeah, right,
So
right.
you obviously had all these ideas for your career. You had dreams, things that you were going to achieve, and then when you take on a role like you have, you give up a lot of that. How
You
big
give
is the
up a lot of them.
sacrifice? How big is the sacrifice, and do you resent it? Is what I want to ask.
No. I mean, somebody asked me like last week or 2 weeks ago if I would do it all over again, and definitely I would. I wouldn't call it sacrifice. Maybe it's too big of a word, but of course, I mean, when you have a normal like life, you expect some steps, some normal steps in your life. So you go to university, then you study, and then you go somewhere and you work and you develop a career. I don't know,
Yeah,
more or less. And For me, this started like this, and I was like quite ambitious, like a person. Uh, and then when it changed like 180 degrees. So it was like a very big change. I mean, I didn't have any misconceptions about housewives or something like this, but I see that a lot of people have this, and that got on my nerves at some point, because most, even some of my friends back home, for the first years, I remember when we were in Vienna, they were kept asking me, "Oh, how are you? And don't you get bored every day? What do you do all day?"
yeah,
or
yeah.
something like this. And no, trust me, you don't get bored. I mean,
There's a lot going
when
on.
you have always your hands full, and besides the things that you do like for your house and for your kids and everything, you have also this representation role. So it's like a full day for
Yeah,
you. But
yeah,
people have this idea, okay, it's like a permanent vacation, or you go only to parties and you get to dress up, because maybe it's partly because, for example, we have all this social media now, and of course we don't post things that we don't like. We post only
absolutely.
like the
The
nice
glamorous
part of
stuff.
the yeah, right.
Yeah,
So if somebody looks there, he says, okay, it's only like nice dinners and
yeah,
nice clothes and stuff. So maybe it's also our fault. But this is one of the things that got me thinking, okay, is it worth it, or is it difficult to do it, or it's I mean, I don't want to complain, and I don't want anybody to get this idea that I'm complaining, or I didn't write a book to complain about anything.
yeah,
I just wanted to write it to get other people know exactly, or at least a bit about the kind of feelings that we go through.
yeah,
And I think some part is because we get to have this role, which is very nice and very fancy, or I don't know how to say,
yeah. It's
but
glamorous.
yeah, but we don't. I mean, unless we get involved more in something, I don't know, whatever we choose to do, we don't have not power. It's not like we don't have enough power, but we cannot do anything that matters. Or I don't know how to say. I mean, okay, you
Yeah,
represent your countries and you can do a lot of things like events or
right.
organize things that will help your country, put it in a better light. But other than this, it's up to you how you manage your time and how you do more with
Yeah,
this role that
yeah,
you have. I mean, I know a lot of people who are perfectly fine and don't feel the need to do anything extra. So
sure.
it's
Yeah,
enough.
but you clearly need to do that something extra.
This is what I felt like I needed to do, and this is why I try to get involved with other things. But
Yeah,
it's a little bit difficult because every time you move, you start from scratch. I mean, the husband has his career and goes on. Okay, we move from country to country, but it's like it has this sense of continuity. But for spouses, it's like everything is
it's
stopped,
just a
and then you
change.
have to. Yeah, and you have to start from the beginning to look for groups and to look for
Yeah.
things you could do, activities and stuff, and present yourself over and over again.
So what is your relationship to Germany right now? You said you've been here for 5 years. How do you feel about the country, and what's your relationship to it?
I like it. I think it has a. I mean, for example, Berlin. What I like most about Berlin is that it's really really green. And
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of cities have like parks and lakes and stuff, but Berlin has a lot of parks and a
Yeah.
lot of lakes and
Yeah.
also forests. I mean, you just drive for 20 minutes and you arrive in the middle of a forest, like you think you are in the mountains or somewhere.
Yeah.
So this is incredible. I mean, the scenery, I like it a lot. And I also like that they are very preoccupied with these themes nowadays, which like climate change, and they try to do, I mean, they are like champions for green energy. And I think a lot of other countries should follow in this part.
So what's planned for the future for you? You said it's about time where you'll be moving on, right?
Yeah, but we don't know anything for sure yet. And with all this, what's happening around the world right now,
Yeah.
it's even more difficult to figure
Right.
out what's gonna happen. This is one of the most difficult parts actually of this life, the part like the last year of your posting, where is a lot of uncertainty. You don't know exactly when you move, where you move. You cannot plan too much in advance. And I think this is not very comforting. I mean,
Yeah.
I think human mind needs to have this landmark. I
Yeah.
will do this in few months, and I will
Absolutely.
plan something. And I usually like to plan a lot. So all my friends joke about it because, for example, I usually make like holiday plans 6 months in advance or something. So they always joke about it. They ask me in summer, "What are you going to do for New Year's Eve?" Or
That's a very German trait, Alexandra.
yeah,
That's very
yeah,
German
but that's why.
planning.
Really, I mean, in some parts, I think I'm like very German. I mean, I'm very on time usually everywhere.
Right.
I'm not late. I like to plan everything. So I'm very organized, and yeah, and the kids. This is also one thing that I would like to say. I also admire about them, their education system.
Yeah.
I really like it. I mean, the way they teach kids, and it's not like really math, Deutsch, German, or things like this. I like how they teach them to be fair, to always say the truth no matter what happens,
Okay.
to respect the others. I think I really really I'm a big admirer of their education systems. I have only good words when it comes to this.
Yeah. So, Alexandra, tell me about the book. Where can people get the book, and what can they expect from the book?
So the book is available on all Amazon accounts everywhere. So basically, I had orders from Indonesia, from Philippines, from Australia also. So you can get it anywhere basically.
Yeah.
And this is one big advantage of Amazon. It's also on paperback and ebook. And these days, most of the people order it like an ebook because it's easier to get it, and in a click it
Yeah.
gets on your Kindle or whatever. And I think whoever is interested, maybe in a diplomatic life, but not like from a professional point of view, from what behind the scenes or what happens,
Yeah.
like as you asked, a normal day of a diplomatic spouse, and but also I think it's could be good also for expats because our lives are quite similar. So the moving is the same, the feelings are the same, so
Yeah.
it's not very different. The way we raise our kids and all the challenges that we face are similar. So I think it could be also interesting for expats. But basically, it could be interesting for anybody who wants to read a book which is not very difficult to read, and who also wants to find out more about Austria and Germany, because it's a book which is also like a travel guide. It's a combination, I would say. It's a combination from a blog or maybe a diary, a travel book.
It
It
felt a
has
little bit like
also
a blog.
some.
Yeah. It feels like a blog,
Yeah.
and I liked how in detail you were, for example, about Berlin. You explained a lot about the different city areas, a lot about what you can do there, and exactly like you say, it is very much like a travel guide as well.
It was funny because I also realized when I finished writing it that the chapter on Berlin is maybe larger than it's about Vienna.
Yeah,
Maybe I did a lot more things here because I had more time, free time, but also because Berlin is quite unique because of its history with the wall and everything.
yeah,
It's a city like no other.
yeah,
So you have to understand the history of it and what all these people went through, which is like terrible. And then you see the city in a different light. You
yeah,
understand all the disparities and the differences between West and East in the city, and you can see them if you walk from
yeah,
East to West. You can clearly see them, and you understand a lot also about the people, I think. So
yeah.
this is why
Absolutely.
it helps. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the book helps in it. And of course, if you want to cook something
There's also
traditional, you
recipes. Yeah.
also yeah.
There's also recipes. So, what I usually do at the end of my podcast interviews is I ask guests for some advice for other expats and other foreigners and so on. But I'm actually going to take it straight from your book because there's as you said earlier, you wrote some guidelines. So I'm just going to read. I'm going to read the guidelines that you got. So you said number one, establish a routine or keep one from home. So I guess that's important to keep some kind of normality, right?
Yeah, because I think when you have a routine from a previous posting or from wherever you used to live before, it gives you a sense of continuity. I mean,
Yeah.
it gives you a sense that not everything is new. And this is the same reason that, for example, when we travel, when we move from posting to posting, I always carry with me a lot of like pictures and paintings on the walls
Mm-hmm.
and curtains and stuff, which I would maybe normally do need, but they give me a sense that is like it's not the same house, but it's something
Yeah.
familiar to
Yeah.
what we used to live in at the
It
previous
feels a
house.
bit
So
like home,
this,
and that's your
yeah,
second point.
right.
Make the new house your comfortable home as if it were your permanent residence. Then number three, we spoke about earlier, stay open to new habits. And number
Yeah,
four, stay humble. Don't forget where you started from. Also something that we
true.
spoke
We
about. So
already,
that's,
yeah, we
yeah.
already talk about it. Yeah.
Number five, be friendly. Keep old friendships, but also make new friends. And I think that's a big one. I think you do have to make new friends when you get to a new country.
Yeah, because you have to. I mean, at the beginning, you might think, okay, I have enough friends for now. And,
Yeah.
somebody, I talked to somebody last week, and she said that usually the third posting, the third move is the most difficult. And I said, oh, really? Why is that? And she said, yeah, because at some point, maybe you're fed up with moving from
Yeah.
place to place. And also, you are not very, you become a little bit more not self-sufficient, but you think I'll have enough friends. I also have like expats and foreigners from other
Yeah.
countries that we've been posted before that we keep in touch now. So I have a quite a wide circle of friends. I don't need to make any. And this is a big mistake. I mean, of course, you should keep your friends from
Yeah.
back home or from wherever you traveled, but stay open to new
Yeah.
possibilities and to new friendships.
Yeah. And then number six, don't compare people and places, which is something I think we spoke about right at
Yeah.
the top of the episode.
Yeah.
Respect the new customs and people. I think that's a big one. I think that's a very important point for wherever you're
And
moving
you
to.
have to be prepared. Of course, maybe in Europe there are of course differences, and every culture has its differences. But I think it's even more important if you move, for example, to Asia or to move. So you have to be aware of the customs and
Yeah.
people, what might offend them or whatever. So
Yeah.
you have to be very careful with this kind of thing, and maybe study a little bit before moving.
Yeah. And then number eight, get involved. Don't stay aloof. And I think
Uh,
yeah.
you, I think we already talked
Yeah.
about it. So
Yeah. Something else you mentioned earlier. Number nine, find groups that you belong to.
it's kind of related to the previous one. So that's why you need to have like interest to find something, whatever. I mean, you can go
Yeah.
to learn the language, you can go to cooking classes, or I don't know, whatever you want to do, what gives you pleasure, but also try to be part of a group. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what kind of group, whatever.
Yeah. And luckily, Germany is the country of Vereins or associations.
Yeah,
There's
right,
lots of groups
right.
you can
Yes,
join.
yes. So you have a variety of choices. You just have to look for them.
Yeah. And then number 10, learn the local language. Obviously, I think that goes
Yeah,
without saying.
it was difficult in the beginning.
How's your German now?
It's good, but I still make probably a lot of mistakes, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get this look from my children sometime when I, for example, the friends come over and I start to speak German, and they are like looking
Oh
at me,
God.
Mama, please
Just
speak to
shh.
English. Yeah, but I could never compare to them. They speak like perfect German, no accent, nothing.
Yeah.
So for me, it will never be this way. So
No.
I have to get used to it.
Kids have a great way of picking up languages. It's unbelievable.
Right, right.
Number 11, live the present and don't worry too much about the future.
This is especially good for us, for
Yeah.
diplomats, because
Yeah.
when you move somewhere, you know it's not permanent. For example, for expats, you have this option that maybe you opt for a local contract or something, and you decide, okay, I want to stay here longer, I want to
Mm-hmm.
stay maybe forever or whatever. For us, this option is never available. So
Yeah.
you have to know from the beginning that the day when you move is coming.
Right.
So you have to prepare for that, but you don't have to think too much about it.
Yeah.
You just try to enjoy the present and don't think about the future, because the future, I mean, nobody knows the future, obviously, but for you is even more uncertain because you don't know which country are you going to be
Yeah.
next. So
Yeah.
you don't know anything about the future. So it doesn't help to think too much
Yeah.
about it.
Just don't worry about it. Live for
Yeah,
today.
right. Yeah.
And the last tip, number 12, make the most out of it.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the conclusion of all,
Yeah. Yeah.
all
And
things.
it is. I think it's important to keep that in mind. Like, just whatever the situation you're in, whatever the frustrations you're dealing with, just try and make the most of it.
And to, try to see the good
And see
in
the good.
any situation.
Yeah.
So try to make advantage of all the things, the situations that come up, and try to see what's good in
Yeah.
them. What
Yeah.
good could come up out of it.
So I will put links to the book where people can get the
Thank
book
you.
online in the show notes. I will also, you're on Instagram. So I'll put a link to your
I'm on
profile on Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah, I'm on Facebook, on Instagram. On Facebook, actually, I have a Facebook page which is called Just a Diplomatic Spouse.
Oh, okay.
I'm on Instagram. I got also a lot of reviews on Amazon after
Okay.
people read the book. So I'm open to to stay in touch with the
You'll
readers.
find Alexandra somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk about this. Thank you. Thanks
Thank you for inviting me.